Hello, and welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Deborah Donalds, and today our guest is Roxanne Rydell, who also goes under the name Madison Woods, which is her pen name. And Madison is the creative force behind Wild Ozark, nestled in the heart of the Ozark Mountains. And she is a self-taught artist who crafts her own paints from locally sourced rocks and natural materials. Beyond her art, Madison is also a writer and a ginseng grower, and deeply connected to the land she calls home. Hi, welcome, Madison.
Hi there. It's good to meet you.
So tell us a little bit first, before we even begin, about Wild Ozark.
Well, I live in the middle of what is almost wilderness in the Ozarks of Northwest Arkansas. So that is where the Wild Ozark came from. And everything I do is pretty much tied to the land. And being around nature. So it all just goes together, and Wild Ozark worked well for a name.
And is this like a sanctuary, or you just kind of like decided to take a plot of land in that area and start like living off the grid there?
I moved here in 2005. We did buy some land. It's 160 acres. About 10 of it is actually where we actually live. So in one way, you can say it's a sanctuary because we have so much biodiversity here. And I feel like I'm a steward to the land, and I like to identify what's here and make sure that things that need protection get protection. So it's a sanctuary for all the wildlife that almost has nowhere left to go. I mean, my husband hunts, so we do eat the meat, but we don't hunt indiscriminately. We don't kill things indiscriminately. We relocate snakes if they're coming into the chicken house or something like that. Very seldom do we need to actually kill anything, and I don't like to kill anything without just cause. So it's a sanctuary for me, for my husband, for the animals that live here and the plants that live here. So, yes.
Well, it sounds beautiful. So you're both an artist, and also you go by the name Roxanne Rydell, and that's a real estate, like you're a real estate agent. So that's your name that you use when you're actually doing business. How do you navigate both worlds as an artist and as a real estate agent?
The name thing is a new problem, and I'm still integrating. When I first moved here, I had a business for my writing, and I called it Madison Woods. And people started calling me Madison Woods, so I just took out a fictional name at the courthouse and started using Madison Woods. 16 years down the road, I get into real estate. And for real estate, you have to use your real name. And the pronunciation is Rydell. It's a German name. My husband's German. But now I am trying to integrate the two personas, which are the same person going by different names, doing different things that both tie into the same root, which is the land here. And it's been interesting trying to integrate the two sides. With the art, it's all based on the land. You know, I paint things from the land. I use the land to make the paints. And the real estate is also people who are moving from more urban places most of the time, looking for somewhere to get where they have more nature and biodiversity. So it all goes well together. It's just a matter of getting over the name issues.
So as far as like using the paints, how do you create the paints from nature? What do you do, or what do you use?
Oh, this is so much fun. And everyone who has ever done a demo or taken classes get to experience this. I gather rocks, basically, and there's certain rocks that make good pigments. And where we live happens to be just overflowing with rocks. Most people hate them. Most people never notice the color in them either. But when you start smashing the rocks or rubbing the rocks or the way I found out about it was because they get crushed on the driveway under the tires and it spills color. And so as an artist, I was always an artist. I've always drawn and taken an interest in doing nature crafts and things like that. But for many years I worked. It was almost a 2-hour drive to get to work. But for many years, I noticed the color on the driveway from the broken rocks and didn't take the time to actually see what this could be. And one day, after I had left the workforce outside and took a piece of paper down the driveway with me and rubbed a little bit of that rock powder on the paper, and it made color on the paper, which was very exciting. I thought pastels, at first I was going to make pastels. And I started researching and seeing how you could make paint. And as it turns out, paints were originally made from crushed rocks, and they still are in a lot of cases, industrially. So that's where that started. I found crushed rocks on the driveway and then started gathering rocks and smashing rocks and washing the pigments with water and settling out the dust. And then you take that and dry it and add it to your matrix, whether it's a watercolor or an oil paint or any other kind of paint. It starts with a pigment.
So now that you realize you could do these paintings and you started to, I guess, sell them in the area where you live, what were some of the reactions? Because they're absolutely beautiful.
People did not know that you could actually make paint like this. There is a worldwide renaissance, I guess you could say, of making paints this way. So I found a huge community on Instagram where people share their own process and how they've made things and the colors from their areas. And they're all very similar around the world. But the local people who come out to events when I have a show and tell booth or a demo booth or things like that, they really never noticed that there's so much color all around them and a resource like this everywhere you go. But it's very labor intensive to make the paint. I don't know of anyone who has ever taken one of my courses or bought any of the paints who have continued to make the paints themselves. I think you really have to have some sort of an obsession to keep it up. And I do.
So part of the way that you also support yourself, besides being a real estate agent, is you actually give courses, correct? In painting to people.
I did. In previous years, my business got started right when COVID hit. So it didn't have a whole lot of time to build for doing in-person events. And since then, I've gotten into the real estate, which doesn't leave me a whole lot of time for doing in-person events. But I'm trying, as I'm balancing the real estate life and the art life, I want to get back to doing courses. But yes, people come out here to our land, which we call Wild Ozark, and we'll gather rocks and smash them and go through the whole process of making the paint. And I also do the classes outside of here. I'll just take the rocks with me and we'll go through it and do the whole thing in a different setting. So it can be done. It's just, it's a lot easier when it's here. We just don't have the facilities and the amenities that you might get. I mean, it's a half a mile from the gate to my house, and we'll be working at least a half a mile away. So there's nowhere to go eat, nowhere to go to the bathroom. It's a lot more convenient to do it somewhere else sometimes than it is to do it here.
So tell me a little bit about how you're living off the grid and what this means, because a lot of people don't really realize it. And it's not that you're completely off the grid, because you still are in communication, but you try your best to live off of the land, as you said, hunting. And I imagine, sustaining, like using things that are, I guess, environmentally sustainable. Can you explain a little bit what that even means for some people who aren't aware of it?
Well, we are very integrated, so we're not off grid, like you say. What we have is a solar array that is capable of running our house and my husband's shop full of woodworking equipment and welding machines and everything. We have a battery backup, and our battery uses potassium hydroxide instead of the toxic acids that you can't dispose of very easily. And so we do try to stay environmentally sensitive with everything we do. And so we go out. I go out twice a week to go to work, more often if I have to show anything. I don't have cows. I don't have livestock. I have 2 horses that are basically pets. They don't really do anything towards the homestead. I do have chickens, and I like having chickens to have our eggs. I generally don't kill the chickens either. So it's eggs there, and then we buy most of our groceries. I do have a garden. It has not been very successful. It's a lot of rocks and not very good ground for making gardens. But this land does sustain us in many ways. You know, my husband hunts every year. He'll get a deer or 2, and we'll keep that in the freezer. And we try not to buy meat. Prefer to eat something that has had a life that didn't have to live in fear or filth or horrible living conditions. And so in that way, we try to be more self-sustaining.
Yeah, because a lot of people always say that a lot of the products that we're eating also, the animals that are kept in those pens, I've seen a lot of those PETA videos, and it's like very sad. It's horrendous. And then you are ingesting all that suffering and pain that was in that animal that has to have some kind of
I think it does. I think it has to have an impact because your emotional state affects everything. How can it not affect everything in the things you eat as well? I mean, even plants. When you eat plants that are grown in a nice moist environment, they're going to produce better fruit. However, when it comes to medicinal plants, the little bit stressed they get before you harvest them, if they have a drought, that makes them more powerful. So it's kind of strange to think about it. I never really put that much thought into it other than state of mind. I just don't like the way we raise food in mass and without any respect towards the creatures that we're using. And I can do without meat if I needed to, but my husband doesn't agree. So we compromise.
Yeah, that's fine. And do you find that living closer to nature and with more autonomy over like controlling to some degree, because you do say you go grocery shopping, but having some of the autonomy to select certain things affects your mental state and your perception?
Definitely. Living close to nature, you also see life and death. It happens. It happens every day. It's part of nature. So the actual concept of not wanting to kill something isn't because death is a bad thing. It's just part of nature, and sometimes it's necessary. And then having control and autonomy, like you say, I have the option because over the years that I've lived out here, I've learned things you can eat, and I've learned the plants you can eat. I use the plants for medicine in our household. That gives me a tremendous peace of mind, is knowing that we have some ability to care for ourselves because the earth gives us the resources to do that. And being close to nature helps you to learn and understand that better. It's really difficult if you're never out interacting to learn to identify things and know when something's in a good condition, when it's not in a good condition, where you shouldn't pick it. Maybe you shouldn't pick these at all because there's only these few. Things like that you have to spend time doing in order to actually feel any sort of confidence about it. Mushrooms, for example. We have a lot of mushrooms here, but I only know a few with enough certainty to want to take that home and eat them. So it's not something you're going to learn from a book and then go out and live off the land without having some practical experience with it. But that does bring me a lot of comfort knowing that if I get a cold, I know which plants to use. It does not help if you get something that you need urgent medical care. So I am not anti-medical care. But a lot of times what I will do is go to the doctor to find out what's wrong and then come home and treat it myself. And if that doesn't work, then I have the backup prescription that I need. But
Yeah, exactly. It's not to say that like you can't go to the doctor, but it's that idea that you can start to do things if you know you have a certain condition that can also prevent you
exactly.
from having to get to the doctor, especially if you're eating a certain way and you're taking certain herbs to help yourself.
Yep, it all interacts with each other.
So you are not Christian. You've already explained that to me, and I still asked you to be on the show regardless because we do not judge. But I would love to know, like, what does spiritual connection to you look like on a daily basis in relationship to your lifestyle and your painting? What do you think?
I think that we're all part of a greater whole, and that greater whole is what most people refer to as God. So it's not that I have no sense of connection to that concept. I just I think that everything is important, not just people, not just people's souls. Everything is interconnected. We all depend on each other. Tiny little things impact farther down the line in tremendous ways that we don't notice because we think we're the important ones, where we're not the only important ones. So in that way is how I interact on a spiritual level. I don't have a regular practice of doing certain things or rituals or things like that to interact. I simply exist as a part of a whole. And I feel that because humans are, I think, intended to be more caretaker and stewards than pillagers and rapists of the earth. So I take that as a responsibility because I am in a position to be able to do that because of the Creator granted things that make us different. So it comes with responsibility. And it's kind of difficult to explain. I don't have a dogma to give structure to it. It just is.
I think you answer that like authentically and beautifully, and it's valuable in everything you said, that we are all interconnected in that sense that, you know, we don't normally look at it from that perspective, but everything we do has a very big impact on all the other creatures that live on this earth, on this planet. So that would pretty much sum it up as far as I think, you know, the concept of what it is to feel, I would say love and concern, no, for everything, not only ourselves. Yeah, respect, exactly.
And it applies to me, not just living creatures, but things that people don't ordinarily consider to have life, such as a rock. Even though I am taking rocks and smashing them and changing them, it's a metamorphosis. They're undergoing a transformation. And then they are bringing awareness and light and symbolism of the beauty of this earth. So it's an interesting place to think.
Do you see yourself living this lifestyle in the next 5 years? Do you think that you're going to, yeah?
I think it'll become more important to know these things and to feel these ways. It's a crazy world out there. The more I'm out there, the more crazy it seems to get. So the thing about nature is it is what it is. It's not lying. It's not deceitful. It's not, it has no ulterior motives other than to survive day to day. And it's not taking anything out personally on one person or one group of people or another. It just is. And I'm part of that. And that's how I like to think.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Madison, for joining me to discuss this. And for those of you wanting to learn more about Madison's paintings, you're going to see that the links to her page, and I guess also to the like on your page, you have all of your different paintings there. So anyone can go and take a look at them, right?
Yep, I sure can.
So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so you never miss an event or an exciting discussion. So thank you so much, Madison, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dahlia. It was great to be here.